Beware the shape of forgotten things. Our fears and dreams are not our own once they are beneath. Those are now for the sunless depths, the crawling bed, and the king beneath the sea. Today on the Comic Book Report, Aquaman Andromeda by Ram V and Christian Ward. Stick around and check it out. Greetings everyone, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I've got another work from DC's Black Label. Today we're going to be looking at Aquaman Andromeda, and this is a piece I've really been curious about for some months, so I'm really excited to have a copy. Before we jump into today's review though, I just want to shout out and say a thank you to our channel sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com. If you're looking to pick up your own comic book collected editions, I highly encourage you to check out their website. You can find a link in this video's description, and if you find something you like, you can even use my discount code at checkout, TheComicBookReport, to receive $2 off of your order. Please note if you use my affiliate code or link to make a purchase, I will earn a small commission, but it's a fantastic way to support this channel. Thank you so much for considering. Now let's get started with today's review. First, some quick facts about today's collection. The issues in this volume were written by Ram V and illustrated by Christian Ward. The comics in this volume were published by DC Comics beginning in 2022 as part of their Black Label collection. The volume itself collects Aquaman Andromeda, issues 1 through 3. And finally, this is an oversized hardcover edition with glossy print paper stock, a glued binding, and a total of 168 pages. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and issue a general spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the contents of today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, and here's our first look at that oversized hardcover collection from DC Comics, and she is a beaut. Like I said, this is a collection I've been curious about for some time. When this was being released issue by issue, I was already interested. I've heard a lot about Ram V, but this is my first encounter reading his actual writing, and I am absolutely hooked. I wasn't familiar with this artist either, Christian Ward, but honestly, I love their work in this collection. You can see a great sampling on this dust jacket, really indicative of the kind of art you'll see within the pages as well. You might have noticed this is not only oversized, it's in that nice square format. I've reviewed several books that have this same format, like Harleen from Stepan Sajek, Fantastic Four Full Circle by Alex Ross, Catwoman Lonely City by Cliff Chiang, just to name a few. It's a beautiful format, especially when you're wanting to showcase the art. In this case by Ward, I think this was an excellent choice. Honestly, even looking at the art on this dust jacket, it's easy to be so swept up into it. I frankly love the cooler color palette of the ocean and a good deal of the aquatic creatures, juxtaposed of course with the orange of Aquaman's gear, along with some of the other warmer elements we see. It's really a beautifully done book. And to that end, I want to do one more examination of this dust jacket, this time also looking at those interior flaps, and then I'm going to spread it all out so you can see everything at a glance. As you can probably already tell, this is a full wraparound cover on the dust jacket here, and it is stunning, absolutely compelling, visually interesting, and absolutely a selling point for this book. I'm always tickled when the art they use is actually from the collection, so you get a good feel for the art before you even open the book's pages. Very cool, and absolutely what is done here. As far as the under the dust jacket artwork as well, this is stamped with a really beautiful selection of art. It has the kind of trippy quality we see throughout the book as well. Very nice here. I think it really goes into the kind of sci-fi horror themes or kind of ideas we have explored in this book. Really just a beautiful book and beautiful dust jacket. And now that we're done with that closer look at the exterior, I did want to spend a moment just looking at the binding in this collection. As I mentioned, it is a glued binding, but it is a shorter collection, so I think overall this binding was sufficient. It didn't lay open perfectly flat, but I felt gutter loss was fairly minimal in this collection. You'll see as I flip through though, and you can make some of those choices for yourself. And before we jump into the book proper, I do want to do a couple size comparisons, just real quick if you're unfamiliar with this format. So I brought out a standard size hardcover of Aquaman from the New 52, along with my oversized omnibus edition of the Justice League New 52, Volume 1. These are both good size comparisons to compare with this book. Standard size is also very similar to the trade paperback sizing or your floppy issues. So you can see this is definitely oversized compared to that in every direction. Compared to the omnibus, it is the same height as an omnibus, but it definitely goes out farther in what I'll call the width. So it's definitely even more oversized than an omnibus edition, but it sits just as tall. I just wanted to give you this size comparison. I know for collectors out there, this can be invaluable, especially if you've never had this format before and you want to get a sense of scope, especially for storage or how it might look on your bookcase. Okay, and now without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into Aquaman Andromeda. Again, right from the beginning, I was absolutely hooked. I was kind of predisposed to like this. Like I said, I've heard of Ram V. I've heard such great things about his writing. I am a kind of casual Aquaman fan as well, and the idea that this was kind of a heavy science fiction, kind of light cosmic horror approach to the character, and knowing what I knew about Ram V's writing, again, I haven't read personally, but I've heard that he's sometimes a bit lyrical in his prose, can be kind of deeply philosophical and have that little bit of a horror bend. I think that this was just really well matched conceptually, and frankly, I was really wowed by the product here. So this is a 3-issue collection from Black Label. This is honestly one of the only drawbacks for me. I would have loved if this series was closer to maybe 6 issues, just to spend more time with these characters and maybe unpack more of their trauma or some of their nuances or interactions, because frankly, this book left me wanting more. And honestly, that is a good thing. I don't feel unsatisfied. I think everything was earned. I think we had a terrific resolution. I love the snippets we got of the characters. I just found myself wanting more. Anyway, I was really just kind of clicked in right from the jump. I think the premise is really well set up. Essentially, there is a UFO, an unidentified flying object, that crash lands in this part of the ocean that is pretty much as far away from any landmass as you could possibly be. It's kind of a graveyard for ships and debris, like some kind of like NASA programs and stuff will have this as sort of a terminus for things that come back down. But anyway, there's this unidentified object that crashes into the ocean and goes to these like ocean depths. And so we have this team of explorers that are supposed to go down in a submarine or some kind of submersible. This team is kind of made of a very eclectic group of people. There's like a marine biologist and kind of a mercenary kind of figure, some military personnel, and just kind of miscellany from there. And they're basically going to be sent really deep into the ocean depths to kind of just do an exploratory mission. They don't have a ton of information. They're being sort of catered out there by this maybe military ship. Everything's very hush-hush and classified. They're all a bit nervous about the mission, but everyone kind of resolves to go through with it. While this is happening, we kind of have this older, grizzled Aquaman approaching this sort of almost uninhabited isle and talking to the locals. But Aquaman himself is set up as kind of a secondary or tertiary character, especially in the beginning of this narrative. He's really not the focal point of this main story. We also have Black Manta, one of the prominent Aquaman villains, set up as sort of a counter mercenary who's trying to get to this UFO first, maybe extract the key technologies or intels for the people motivating him. So we have all of these different factions kind of established, and we have our main crew of characters going beneath the waves in the submarine and trying to make contact with this just alien vessel. It is kind of spherical in shape, and it's very just mysterious. As they're kind of going down, they kind of tease into this kind of psychological thriller, horror aspect of the book, almost from the jump. We have the crew kind of getting to know each other. There's a lot of guarding and kind of misdirects and what's really happening here. And the crew, almost from the jump again, starts to get a little bit paranoid, especially as they go deeper and deeper into the water. And they even kind of explore this idea that psychologically it's really common for this to happen as you go deeper and deeper into this more alien environment. Shortly after this, we actually have the military vessel on the surface get attacked by what basically looks like a giant kraken. Really intense stuff. We have just like a giant tentacle coming out of the water. It messes with their radar. It's super intense. We have Aquaman kind of coming in to try to mitigate the damages, save the day. And it's a really fun introduction to character. But this Aquaman, like I said, he's older, he's grizzled, and he just feels kind of haunted as a character. And that's really something we see with most of our primary primary cast of characters is there's this notion that they're all haunted by their past. We get kind of fleeting, nightmarish images or flashbacks that kind of explore or tease out a lot of these characters' histories and kind of really explain their present motivations. You kind of get the implication as you go further too that whatever's going on in this alien ship is really bringing these memories and traumas and histories to the surface, along with a good degree of paranoia and general mistrust or doubt of the fellow characters. I'm not going to explore every single subplot or character motivation in this book. I definitely want to leave some to the imagination or to those that want to still read the book. But I am going to be going into more spoilers. But just as a general idea, again, we explore kind of the haunted nature of a lot of these characters. Like one of the main female leads is haunted by this memory of her dad, essentially, who was himself a really big lover of the sea. He kind of falls off a boat and drowns and just goes missing, never to be seen again. And this idea that the sea took him. We have the more mercenary fellow having these deep regrets and memories of basically sending a whole group of refugees to their death in the ocean as well. And we just have a lot like that. We have the military guy haunted by his own previous alcoholism and feelings of insecurity. Anyway, we have so much of this happening, and it's really, really powerful and really well constructed. Like I said, we have these kind of nightmarish grasps or flashbacks, and they really powerfully motivate the present actions of these characters. I think the overall setup feels kind of like, when you watch the first Alien movie or any of those really kind of undersea kind of horror movies where you have those crew of people going under the ocean or into space and then trying to meet with each other, but there's kind of mistrust and things spiral out of control. It feels like really well-trod territory, especially for film fans. I know I've seen this before. I think there's actually some really big plot similarities in many ways to the Michael Crichton's Sphere. I know if you've seen that movie as well, there are some similarities visually, thematically, tonally, but I really, really loved it. At any rate, so we explore these characters, and we have Black Manta in hot pursuit. Aquaman kind of tangentially meets up with the crew, or more specifically, kind of the female lead of the book. Aquaman himself, like I said, is haunted. You almost feel like he's at this kind of crossroads in his life where he doesn't know who he wants to be anymore. The kind of half-human, half-Atlantean king legacy weighs heavy on him, and in many ways, he's kind of adrift. But he knows that there's this object here, and he suspects it's even more dangerous than these people expect. He feels like he might know what it is, and we get kind of development on that as it goes further. So the sub does find this object. They kind of rest on the floor of the ocean, and they send a crew to kind of explore it. And this is where things kind of come to a head. We have the advancement of the subplot with Black Manta, who breaks his way onto the Andromeda, which is the name of this submersible. He breaks his way onto it, uses some kind of cloak stealth technology to basically corrupt one of the members. He shows up and basically says, hey, this is all going to go very badly. When it does, I will help you escape to the surface, but tell no one, and in return, you do this for me. And the idea is Black Manta setting up this guy to fail and to compromise the security of the ship, and so it'll make it easier for him to take over, get what he needs from the sphere, and kind of move forward. Anyway, all of this is happening, and we have a couple people going into the sphere itself. From here, again, it kind of goes out of control. We have the sphere doing weird stuff, really weird alien things. You have no idea. A lot of the crew thinks that this might be kind of an extraterrestrial alien ship. And we have the revelation from Aquaman that this actually started underwater. It was launched into space and now it's crashed back down. But that this might have been responsible for the kind of drowning of Atlantis initially, and that everyone had to break away from what's in this ship to survive. And basically there's kind of this entity or technology, this being or something that can kind of take stuff from people's thoughts or subconscious and twist them into these nightmarish physical embodiments or things like that. And it has just such an incredible amount of power, and it kind of feeds on your deepest nightmares and things in your mind that haunt or torment you. And it's a really interesting idea, the idea that Atlantis may have sunk because it was one of the greatest fears of its citizens, and this thing kind of brought that to life. And even as they got closer or interacted with this, it's starting to feed off of the nightmares of everyone around it. Very, very cool subplot. We have Aquaman trying to save the day. There's parts of the ship that start to crumble. We have some of the crew being injured or killed off. And as we go into the third act, we have some of the characters kind of turning on everyone or getting kind of corrupted or super paranoid to the point where they get homicidal. We have some of the past for some of these characters bubbled to the surface. We have some dark confessions of, again, people's pasts. And we have Aquaman hurt and then ultimately trying to save the day. And there's this idea that one of the main missions here was not only to retrieve salvageable technologies or information about the ship, but if all else fails or it's too dangerous, that the Andromeda itself has this crazy bomb that kind of will create a localized black hole or something to destroy what's at the bottom of the sea here, and everything will be deniable and have no trace. And so that's all happening, and it's like, oh, is anybody going to make it out alive? Who's going to escape? What's going to happen? How is Aquaman going to save them? And again, everything kind of comes to a head. We have the thing in the sphere or in the spaceship manifest itself as a big, ugly Aquaman King giant monster at one point, and that's really cool because there's this scene between Black Manta and Aquaman 2 where you're not really sure whose manifestation it is. Is it Black Manta's greatest fear to have his enemy larger than life and even more monstrous? Is it Aquaman kind of fearing his own greater than status as an evil king or something? Anyway, it is all really, really cool, and we ultimately have Aquaman save the primary female lead as one of the only survivors of the Andromeda, and he basically brings her to the island that he visited at the very beginning with locals that will help her, and he disappears into the waves. And that's kind of where this story resolves itself. Like I said, I'm leaving out quite a bit of detail here, and honestly, it covers so much ground for 3 issues. It's actually really, really impressive to me. But this is really beautifully done. Transitioning to the art for a minute, as you've seen throughout this whole review, it is stunning. Christian Ward knocked it out of the park. I think this art absolutely perfectly, pitch perfectly matches the tone, the overall atmosphere, the vibe, the narrative, the prose style. It just fits really perfectly. There's something dreamy about it, kind of impressionistic about it. The character models are all very well defined, and yet they're not overly specific as far as like rigid, harsh lines. There is this kind of blurry, dreamlike quality to it. I don't know how to describe it, but it's really, really wonderfully done. I think all of the alien environments from the undersea kind of biomes, as well as on the UFO ship, or even in the halls of the Andromeda, everything really has this sophisticated, technological kind of horror feel to it. It just really, really works for me, and I love it. Like I said, this makes me feel like it's like an old 80s or 90s sci-fi horror thriller. I would love to see this adapted in live action. This is really the Aquaman movie I want that I don't know that DC will ever make. I would even settle for a DC animated film, but I don't know if we're going to get it. But I think that this is such a cinematic work that I would love to see it adapted in other mediums. Until then, and maybe if that never happens, I'm just so happy that this exists. I think it's really, really well done. Another facet of the art I'd like to explore really quick is even the character design for Aquaman. They have him have almost kind of barnacle or kind of calcifications across his body, this idea that he's almost becoming more part of the ocean. It makes him feel even more like a force of nature or a guardian of the depths in many ways. I just love that approach. The creators speak to that a bit in the bonus features of this book as well, which you've just seen. And honestly, that already brings us to the end of Aquaman Andromeda. All that's left now is to give this book a grade. For a thrilling and absolutely harrowing psychological science fiction cosmic horror ride, thinly veiled as an Aquaman story, The Comic Book Report is happy to give Aquaman Andromeda by Ram V and Christian Ward an A. This is easily one of the more spectacular books I've read in some time, especially at DC. Really, really loved this book. It was right up my alley. I think that for those curious, this does have some mature subject matter, some language perhaps, but it's not overly graphic. I would also say the horror elements are lighter in favor of a more psychological sci-fi with, again, just a dash of horror. I think this is really accessible to a lot of people. I think you need to know absolutely nothing about Aquaman or DC in general to enjoy this work, and it's just really fascinating. I hope more people decide to pick this up, and I hope in general that we see more storytelling like this, especially in the big 2 publishing houses, DC and Marvel Comics. Definitely a must-read by my estimation, but let me know what you think of this book or my review in the comments, and until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to give this video a like, that comment we talked about, and maybe check out another video on your way out. Thanks so much, and have a good one.